welcome back to it. It is your feel-good breakfast show, Expresso. It's a Monday morning, and so we're talking relationships this morning. Ooh, it's a hot topic, a hot one indeed. Today, narcissism and its impact on our relationships and sense of self. So hop onto Facebook right now, Expresso Morning Show, SABC3, and let us know how you would define a narcissistic person. Let's hear what you have to say about this topic, maybe first on the street.
How I would describe a narcissistic person is someone that is very self-involved and is unable to have full empathy for other people.
Narcissism operates on a spectrum, and I think that everyone falls on that spectrum, whether it's to the extreme or in the middle, and I think having that balance is difficult.
I do think we all have a narcissistic part of us. But what's really important within a relationship is to be able to put that part aside.
Yes, I have dated a narcissist before. In the beginning, it was fine. There were no signs, but soon, a couple of months after that, then the signs started showing.
They're not the nicest of people. They live for themselves, and they try to make you feel like the bad guy when you're actually not.
Well, some opinions over there, and I think what you can hear is that there's a spectrum, there's maybe a bit of lack of understanding here and there, and this is why we are joined online by counseling psychologist and founder of Conscious Psychology, Sanam Naran, who will offer some much-needed guidance on this subject, and we just want to welcome you. So, welcome to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. This is a topic, as you could hear from the opinions of many people on the street, narcissism. There are so many definitions, and I think it's important for us to just start off and unpack. So, in any relation sort of situation, we're talking about dating and work and family, I feel like let's start off with what's the best way to deal with narcissistic behavior?
So I think this is such an interesting question because, you know, it's really difficult to deal with someone who is diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. But, you know, like everyone on the streets have been saying, we all have some narcissistic traits within us. It's part of the human condition. But I think the best way to really deal with someone who you think is a narcissist is to put up boundaries. I think that's the most important way to sort of deal with a narcissist, is to tell them, you know, I don't like it when you treat me this way, or, you know, this is rude and disrespectful and you cannot treat me this way.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. But I think the number one way to deal with a narcissist is to put up your boundaries.
So do you think that we all have the potential to be narcissistic? I mean, I know you said that it is part of human behavior or human nature, could be an element of it, but is this behavior just inherent and we can just conclude that that's what it is?
So I think, you know, narcissistic personality disorder is a product of childhood. It's a product of over-admiration from parents or neglect from parents. But, you know, we all tend to be selfish sometimes. We all tend to, you know, put our needs before others. And that's okay. But when it sort of infiltrates our relationships and has us a heightened, you know, sense of who we are and a grandiose sense of self, that's when it becomes a problem. So I wouldn't say it's completely inherent in our nature, but it's usually a product of our childhood.
I'd like to do some polarity over here because I want to ask, when does narcissism become toxic? And are there any instances where it's actually a good thing for one's, you know, personal sort of, well-being, perhaps?
So this is also another interesting question, because what we see and research suggests that narcissistic personality disorder is quite common in, you know, corporate situations and people who have been able to climb the ladder. Not to say that everyone that is successful is a narcissist, that's not what I'm saying, but it's quite common in the corporate environment.
Yeah.
So in those settings, you know, where you need to be a leader, where you need to sort of stamp on people's toes to get to the top, that's where it can be helpful. But for the most part, you know, narcissistic traits isn't helpful, and it really affects your relationships, and it can be harmful to the other people in your life.
Well, I like the fact that you mentioned relationships. So in the context In the context of romantic relationships, what kinds of conduct from their partners can fuel a narcissist's behavior?
So what we have is something called a narcissistic supply, and this is what narcissists usually need and thrive on in order to, feel good about themselves. Because at the core of narcissism is a really insecure person that struggles with their self-esteem and their self-worth, and so they need this validation and approval from the people around them. So if you're in a romantic relationship, and you're having an argument with your partner and you really express how hurt you are with the way they're treating you and the fact that you need them in your life and you really, love them and want this to work, it often heightens their sense of approval and their validation, and that's something that they really need. So it's a tough one, but if you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you know for a fact that they are a narcissist, it helps to not give them that validation. And that's where they really are going to, start to crumble and start to, need this validation from other people in their life. And that's sort of how you know that you've cut off that narcissistic supply, if that makes sense.
So I think what's important is to kind of look at a conclusive way to find a place to call out narcissism in your family and your friends and your partners. Maybe you can offer some tips that could assist anybody who can actually call it out, but diplomatically.
Yes, lovingly.
Because lovingly. You know that narcissism, unfortunately, there will be a resistance to anybody calling you out because you're going to just say, hey, I'm just, confident. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So are there any tips you can give us to call this out so we can help and not enable?
So that's a difficult one because, like you said, there is going to be a lot of resistance from someone who struggles with narcissism. But, it helps to kind of get other people involved. So if you're the only one that's telling this person that they need help, that's not going to be helpful. So to get other people in their life involved as well, kind of sit them down in a very gentle way, not as an attack, and tell them, it might be helpful to seek help. It might be helpful to get therapy. I'm also going to get therapy, so I would like for you to as well. So to not put all the blame onto them, but to gently sort of make them see how different aspects of their life is getting affected by their behavior.
I think it's quite important noting the fact that narcissism does stem from a place of need or lack in someone's experience or life. To be able to approach that with love, with kindness,
indeed,
becomes very, very important. Well, listen, Sanam, we're going to keep you around. We're going to be back wrapping up our relationship segment. We're going to be chatting to you some more. So please do weigh in on this conversation on our Facebook page, Expresso Morning Show, SABC3. We'll see you in a bit.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to Feel Good Breakfast Show. This is Expresso and you're live on S3 and it's Monday. We're continuing our love and relationship segment. Today we are discussing narcissism and whether there are ways you can learn how to lovingly tolerate and even connect with the narcissist in your life. Get involved via our Facebook page if you'd like and let us know how would you define a narcissistic individual. We're joined online once again by counseling psychologist and founder of Conscious Psychology, Sanam Naran, to unpack this topic even more. So Sanam, thank you so much for sticking around. We have more questions.
We do have more questions, but maybe before we get into those questions, let's take a look at some of the answers and responses that we've gotten from people when we did ask them questions on the streets. Check this out.
I've learned to understand what my triggers are when it comes to people who are narcissistic, and so I'm aware of that. I think that self-awareness is good, and just distancing yourself from those people, I think, is the best way to deal with it.
If someone comes to me with a big ego, I'll just blatantly ignore you.
A narcissist can change their ways if they actually just think about those around them and also take other people's feelings into consideration.
I don't think they can change. Maybe they can, but I don't think so.
If they are willing to change, then I suppose they probably will. But from my experience, I kind of doubt it.
I don't think there is a good side in being a narcissist because more or less that individual will focus more on themselves, and being part of a relationship is where it's not just about yourself, but about the other person also.
Ooh, it's hot. It's hot indeed.
Oh, yes.
It's a hot topic.
Hot topic, but the thing is,
Well,
we need
Sanam.
to, this is why we have a counseling psychologist to make sure that we unpack it properly. So Sanam, this is where you come in, because as you may know, in Tabiso, my industry, this is a big thing.
It's rife.
It's very, very rife, and in today's sort of image and status-obsessed society, would you say that narcissistic tendencies have increased?
Yeah, so definitely. I think that, you know, with the whole social media movement and instant gratification world, I think that we do see narcissism a lot more, especially with, you know, Instagram and influencers and TikTok and that sort of world. I think narcissism is quite rife.
So how can we identify, Sanam, and curb narcissistic traits within ourselves? Because often it's very easy to think we're picking them up in the people next to us, but also ignore the fact that actually maybe you're picking it up because you are problematic.
Definitely. I think, you know, with picking up narcissism within yourself, it's important to constantly reflect and have that capacity to self-reflect on your own behavior and how you treat other people. So when we do things and when we make decisions, we need to constantly think, well, how is this person feeling with my actions? Can I put myself in their shoes? And that's something, you know, in the psychology world we call mentalization, and that's the capacity to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. In that way, we sort of curb our own narcissistic traits.
So now that we've reflected and we know that it's so rife in every industry, I think it's important to ask, I mean, can a narcissist ever change their ways? And if so, are there any strategies to do so? Instead of just saying, hey, I feel like I'm a narcissist, let's start a soup kitchen outside my house. It can't be that simple. So how do we start actually addressing it within ourselves?
I think this is such an important question because that's what everyone wants to know. Can a narcissist actually change? And, you know, like I said, if we have capacity to self-reflect and think about our own behaviors, that's the first step to being able to change our behavior. So yes, a narcissist can change only if they're open to reflecting on their own behavior, open to therapy, because that's the only way that they can really change their behavior. The thing with a personality disorder, though, is that it's inherent. It's something that's very, very difficult to change. But if there's enough self-reflection, enough therapy, yes, you can most definitely change.
I think what I'm gathering is that narcissistic behaviors and personalities don't develop overnight. It's a series of events and it's a journey of somebody's life experience that builds up and culminates in those expressions and in those behaviors. So it's very important, I think, when we approach that to be able to reflect on the person's experience and look at where they may need help, because sometimes they don't know where to even begin. But thank you so much, Sanam, for joining us this morning. You really have been so fantastic, such an eye-opening conversation, and certainly, hopefully, a lot of people out there will be going out and seeking help for themselves or their loved ones.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated being on the show today.
What an important topic to get through. And the thing is, as long as you know that you're not alone in this, we talk about these things because we actually want to enable you to go seek out help so you can, at the end of the day, be a better person to serve your own happiness too. And of course, when you do that and fill your own cup, you can share with those around you, which is so important, that harmony.
And I wanted to also say, I think that narcissists aren't jumping fast and furiously trying to open soup kitchens.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I said there's got to be a meaningful way to strategize so that we can actually make sure that we smooth it over. But more importantly, just remember that if you do need assistance, there is help out there. You are not alone, and it's not weak to ask for help. It's actually pretty strong.